Hi, and welcome back to Lecture 7. In Lecture 7, we are going to address what is, for many students, one of the major academic weaknesses for them. We want to get on to Lecture 8 because there we're going to study a research project from start to finish. But there's one, as I said in the last lecture, piece in the puzzle left. It has to do with how we organize our time, how we answer the issues of procrastination, and how finally we make sure that all of our projects are getting done, not just a few of them. I'm reminded when I talk about master scheduling and how to overcome procrastination of a story that is told about Louis Pasteur, the great scientist biologist, who was told in a remark that he was a pretty lucky guy. And he had this quote to say. Take a look at this quote as it comes up on your screen. He said, "Chance favors the prepared mind." Now, what I like about that quote is that it speaks directly to the whole idea that we are, I hope at least, trying to explain here in this lecture series, and that is, good students aren't just born majorly intelligent to get straight A's. Good students make themselves good students through any number of ways. We've already talked to some degree about how they do that. In this lecture, as I said, I want to talk about the master schedule. I really want to talk about two major things. I want to talk about how we develop a master schedule, and then I want to talk about how we use a master schedule. I will, as I have done in the past several lectures, I will have examples for you so that you then can see specifically what I'm talking about when I talk about master scheduling. First of all, I want to make sure that we understand what the real problem is for most students. Take a look at this graphic as I put it up and explain to you what for most students is a problem. On the graphic in front of you, you will notice the letter A. Allow it to represent one major deadline, and let's say that it is due on Friday. 90% of the students that I teach, I will give them a single deadline due on Friday. 90% of my students will make sure that that deadline is met and they do okay. But watch what happens on the graphic when I place up there the letters A, B, C, and D. And I say to a student, A is due in 2 days, B is due in 5 days, C I would like due a week later, and D you have a month left to do. Now watch what happens. Most of my students will accomplish the task of deadline A and maybe B. A few of them might start on C. Most of them never even get to D at all. This is what we call the problem of multiple deadlines. Back to the story that I opened with. John, you'll remember, was the fictitious name of the student who he and his parents sat across from the desk, and the mother asked what went wrong. John was struggling with multiple deadlines. When we go to the university, this is one of our major problems for first-year college and university students. They feel like they can't get all the work done because of multiple deadlines. Most students, when they miss a deadline, will report they don't have enough time. This is what I often hear students say. "Mr. McGee, I would have gotten the paper in, but I just didn't have the time." I want to suggest, however, the following little quote. I made it up, but I'm going to use it anyway. Look at the screen and see this as I read it. Your problem is not that you do not have enough time. Your problem is that you do not use the time that you have well. Your problem is not that you don't have enough time. The problem for most of us is that simply we don't use our time to our full advantage. That's what we want to talk about here in getting organized. Really, there are kind of two things that we need to know if we're going to get organized as students. The first is we have to have specific kinds of information. Okay? We have to know specifically, and you're going to want to underline that word, specifically what is due in each one of our classes. The reason I'm having you underscore the word specifically is lots of students will say that, yeah, I have a test in another week or two. That's not specific enough. It's not enough to know in generalities. We have to know what reading, writing, exercise work, homework, and test or exam work is coming. These are the 4 things for every student they have to know specifically. Not only do we have to know what is due, but we have to know when specifically it's due. Again, it's not enough for me to know that I have a test on Friday. I have to know, back to our exam prep lecture, I have to know specifically what's on the test. Will this test cover chapters 3, 4, and 5, or just chapters 4 and 5? See, that's important for me, because if I have to cover 3, 4, and 5, my exam preparation is going to begin earlier. If I only have chapters 4 and 5, maybe a little bit later, and if it's only chapter 5 and I feel like I know that material well, I might only need a day or 2 of exam preparation. I'm hoping that in this master schedule lecture then, you will begin to see how important it is we do master scheduling if we're going to be able to do learning journals as we defined them in lectures 2 and 3. The only way that I can do learning journals is if I know what in fact is going to be covered the next day in class. Think about this too. If you are sitting watching this lecture right now and you have a math class and I were to ask you, what specifically will you be reading for tonight to prepare for tomorrow's class in math? And you don't know the answer to that question. The obvious issue for you is, why not? Now, who usually knows this information? Obviously the teacher. So for us, we want to make sure that we go to our teachers to obtain this information, and I will be speaking here in a moment specifically about ways that you will want to do that. We talk about the steps of master schedule development, and I want to kind of go through these with you. First of all, to step 1. We have to, first of all, determine what time is available for us for our study. We've got to know how we are using our time at the moment. And the key here, obviously, is honesty. We want to be honest. So this is what I recommend that you do. First of all, sit down and make a chart. Make a chart that looks something like the graphic that's on the screen now in front of you. Along the bottom of the chart, you will want to take a look at possible projects that are maybe coming up. Across the top of the chart, we will be placing the days of the week. There they are in front of you, Monday through. Always include the weekend days of Saturday and Sunday. Along the left-hand side of the chart, you will want to place the time you normally wake up in the morning, and there you will want to put the time you consistently rise in the morning, all the way down by hourly divisions to the time that you go to sleep in the evening. Okay? Then what I would want you to do is to think about what specifically it is that you do during each of those moments most of the time. Take a look at the graphic that is in front of you. You will notice here that this is a master schedule, early master schedule, step 1 for Anna. And take a look that you will notice that she has certain things that she does consistently. The empty spaces that are left for you need to be counted up. The empty spaces are the spaces that you will be using to do your study. This is an interesting project for many students who come to me and say, Mr. McGee, I don't have the time to get my studies done. But then when they put together this project, they sometimes will record 15 or maybe 20 blank spots on their chart. You will notice, of course, each blank spot equals 1 full hour, which is to say, Mr. McGee, I have sometimes 20 to 25 hours really unused time, for the most part, consistently unused time. This, of course, is where we will want to be doing some of our major study. Step 2. Step 2 of the master schedule is for us to answer some very important questions, and I've already raised them. We have to go to the source for our information. Here, of course, we're talking about teachers. Now, for those of you who are in high school, most of the time, and this is to some degree unfortunate, high school teachers do not provide daily or weekly course outlines. The difference at university or college is that most college instructors are required to provide a weekly course outline, what we call a course syllabus. What you will find oftentimes is that high school teachers don't provide this information to students, but they do have this information. Students just have to be able to ask for it. We will always then begin with the teacher. If there is no syllabus, then we need to go and to acquire this information. We are, again, interested in knowing specifically what's due in reading and in writing and in exercise work and in what quiz or exam work is due. I want to talk for a few moments about how you need to do that. If you are in a class, let's say a math class, if you are in a class and the teacher has not up to this point provided a syllabus for you, and you feel like you need to know specifically what kinds of pieces of information are coming for the class, how specifically should you do that? A couple of suggestions. First of all, what I believe you should say to the teacher. Go to the teacher and say, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, I need your help. Now, I always recommend that you begin with this phrase, because when you do this, you will then immediately allow the teacher to know that what you are doing is not asking a question which is trying to make them look bad, because this is information maybe they don't know, or maybe they should have given it to students and you're trying to point this out. None of that. When you say to them, I need your help, you are touching a teacher at the very core of why they teach. I need your help because I want to be a better student in your class. To do that, I need the following information. I need to know what is due for the next 2 weeks out. We ask, if possible, that you can get 2 weeks out of information. This is our hope. I need 2 weeks out information on what reading, what writing, what exercise work, and what exam work is coming. And as the instructor gives this information to you, there is, again, any number of ways that they can give this information to you. I personally always recommend that you never ask this question in front of other students. I would strongly recommend that you never place a question like this out there in front of your colleagues, in front of the teacher. One good reason, and I'll talk more about this in Lecture 9, one good reason is you never want to place yourself in a situation where it might be understood by the teacher as you trying to attack them. In issues of power dynamics, as I talk about it in Lecture 9, this is a war you can never win. You want the instructor to understand you're not trying to make them look bad by asking for information that they haven't provided. Also, it is possible that maybe your instructor doesn't know the information. And obviously asking in front of the class will only place them right on the spot, and oftentimes a teacher will respond maybe in a way that would be unkind and not helpful. So my recommendation is always to ask this question, for example, after class when you are alone. Of course, there is always the issue, and we'll talk more about this in Lecture 9. We don't want to simply put ourselves as good students out there in front of other students to be kind of humiliated or to be called the class nerd because we're interested in studies. And sometimes students who are our colleagues might think we're trying to make them look bad by asking this question in front of them. So I recommend that you ask it after class. Many of my students will ask their teachers in the form of writing. They will write a note that they just simply leave for the teacher. The note will say, in a couple of days, is it possible for you to give me the information over the next 2 weeks? One of the important things, though, here is for you to understand that this is information you must have if you are going to do your early pre-class learning journals. Back to the math example with section 7.1. If the 7.1 information is to be presented on Tuesday, I have to have that information for me on Monday. In other words, Monday night I'm reading 7.1 to come to class to receive the information on 7.1 on Tuesday. So it's very important that I get this information from a teacher. And if for some reason or another the teacher isn't quick in giving me this information, I don't give up. I just keep coming back, asking gently, but staying with it. I really need this information so that I can do better in your class. Now, once I have step 1, and I have information provided to me about when I might be able to do my studies, and once I have step 2, I have the specific information, underscore specific again, of what's due and when. Finally now, I'm ready to create what we call the master schedule. We make a master schedule chart now to include all important information for at least 2 weeks out. Take a look at a couple of examples that I provide for you now on a graphic of what a master schedule looks like. By the way, master schedules can look different for students. There's no one set way that it has to look. I asked some of my 9th graders to simply show me the kinds of master scheduling that they are doing. Take a look. Notice on this graphic, the first thing that you see is down the side you will see a list of the important classes and, of course, as well, the dates. Here we're looking at a November 3rd through 9th date, for example. Down the side of the page, the listing of the important core classes, in other words, academic classes, where there would be reading, writing, and that kind of thing. Then notice that there will be a listing across on the top of reading, writing, exercise work, test work. Then for each one of these important classes, notice, there will be the information that is provided. What type of tests, what types of exercises, what types of writing, what types of reading. Notice that as we give you several of these examples, they all look pretty much the same. Now obviously one way to do this is to use a date book. And oftentimes students will use a date book. These came from a student date book, and I strongly recommend that you have one. If you are at all interested in improving your study habits, one of the early on things you must acquire is a student date book, and you have to use it. Now, you can be like one of my students once who said, I need my date book to remember to use my date book. In other words, just because we have it written down doesn't necessarily mean that we're always going to do it. But it's at least a good first start for us. Parents, any time that they want to sit down and speak with their son or daughter about their studies, one of the first suggestions I make is to ask your son or daughter to pull out their master schedule and show it to you. If they don't have a master schedule, that may explain why it is they're struggling, for example, in chemistry or in mathematics or in English. One more time, I want to just reiterate how important it is that we work with a master schedule if we're going to do learning journals. We cannot do learning journals without having a master schedule. It is at the heart of all that we do if we're going to be good students. Why exactly is it we are reading before we come to class? Because we want to learn. And what is learning? The ability to connect new ideas to old ideas. When that math teacher is presenting the information on Tuesday from 7.1, and I've already read it the night before, that information is for me old information. I've already seen it once. So therefore, the second time I hear it, I am able, hopefully, to begin to do more important learning. Now, the only way I can do that is to know the night before what it is I have to read. I cannot emphasize this enough. If a student is struggling in mathematics, the first question is to ask, what kind of reading study are you doing before you come to class? If you're waiting until you get to class to learn the concept for the first time or be exposed to it, you will become frustrated, especially if you struggle as a math student. Again, it's not enough to have a master schedule. You have to follow it. And one of the recommendations that I make for students is that they always begin a study session, back to that discussion of how one should study. I recommend that you always study by opening up your master schedule first and making what I call a to-do list. A to-do list is simply a listing of the important things that have to be done. When, for example, we get to Lecture 8 here in a little bit, and we take a look at Anna's research project, one of the things we're going to see is that she developed immediately a master schedule. Any good student will do this. And then, day by day, there is a to-do list. Now, my wife has a theory, and I'm inclined to believe there's some truth to this theory. She says that there's some power in making a to-do list, and then after you finish with it, marking it off. That there's some power in marking it off, some sense of completion, some sense of achievement. I believe that she's right. At the end of the day, when you have written a to-do list and actually marked off those things, you are able to see in a visible way that you've done something. And that's important for a student, isn't it? Oftentimes when we finish, we're just tired. We know we worked a lot, but we're not always certain exactly what it is that we did. I know that oftentimes people will say, man, I feel really tired at the end of the day, but I'm not always certain exactly what it is I accomplished. A to-do list marked out will provide us with that basic information. This is specifically what I did. Take a look at it. So I would recommend that you at least try to employ a to-do list for yourself, maybe rising in the morning, taking a look at your master schedule, asking yourself, what specifically is it I have due today? Make that list, and throughout the course of the day, referring back to it. The lifeline of good students is this master schedule. Their date book is important to them because therein lies all of their plans for not just this week, but next week and the week after. See, when a student comes to me and says, Mr. McGee, you know, I'm not doing very well in chemistry, my first question is, what are you reading tonight in chemistry for tomorrow's lecture? Chapter 7? Good. What are you reading the day after that in chemistry? 8? Good. What are you reading a week from now in chemistry? Oh, come on, Mr. McGee, I don't even know what I'm reading. Right. There's your problem. See, our problem for most of us as poor students is that we come to class unprepared, and that's because we don't have a master schedule. We have to get to a teacher, we have to ask for this information, we have to have it written down somewhere, and then we have to review it through the to-do list. Finally, in the last few minutes now, I want to talk about some practical applications and some suggestions for the use of the master schedule. And we've got to talk about the P word, procrastination. This is one of those kinds of issues that we find ourselves sometimes talking about as if it's really not that big of a deal, when in fact we know that sometimes it really is. It's like a mother once said to me in a parent-teacher conference about her daughter. She said, you know, Mr. McGee, my daughter was born late. She's always been late. You know, and I think that sometimes we feel this way. But the truth is, we have to make sure that we get stuff done if we're going to be good students. The power of knowing what's due is that you can decide to finish it now or later. For example, think about this. If I am a student and I know that I have math homework this evening that has to be finished, and I sit down and I am on page 20, and I have to do 15 exercises on page 20, and I have my to-do list there, and it's the last thing I have to accomplish, and it's now 7:10 at night, and I get ready to do it when up to my front door comes 3 of my friends and they say, come on, let's go catch a movie at 7:30. Come on, let's go. What do you say? Now I have a major decision to make here, right? I have to decide if in fact I'm going to sit and do my homework or if I'm going to head and go with them to the movie. Now I could ask a majorly loaded question, what would a good student do? The answer is either one. That's right. The answer is either one. Because a good student who has a master schedule knows what's due. Right? They have it written down. They can go to the movie and they can enjoy the movie. Now some students will go to the movie anyway, but the whole time they're sitting there going, oh boy, I should be doing my homework and I'm not, oh boy, that's not, oh boy, now what am I going to. Good students don't have to worry about that. They have made a conscious decision because they're in control. They have a master schedule which tells them, look, this is due tomorrow's second hour. They also know that they want to enjoy their friends. I'll talk more about that in Lecture 9. So they make a decision. I'm going to go to the movie, which means that I'm not going to get my homework done this evening, but I know I've got 15 problems. That will take me approximately 30 minutes to do. I will rise tomorrow at 5:30 instead of 6. See, I'm going to get up 30 minutes early. I'm going to do my homework. Simple. This allows for them to be able to go to the movie, enjoy the movie, come home, go to bed, get up in the morning at 5:30 when they set their alarm clock. It's the payoff for enjoying the film the night before with their friends. This is what good students do. Once you have a master schedule, you know then specifically how you're going to get the work finished. One of the fun things about this is a lot of times there will be college students who have mastered the master schedule and they'll come home for Thanksgiving and they have no homework and their parents think they must not be very good students, when the truth is what they've done is what? Well, they've got all of their homework done before they left for Thanksgiving so that they can enjoy the break. It's a good suggestion. The master schedule looks like it takes a lot of time, but actually in the end it saves you time. Think about it. You're not wasting a lot of mental energy, and this is what good students do. They know how to conserve mental energy so they're not wasting their time kind of running around all over the place. Also, I want to talk about small rewards real quickly. If you keep to your master schedule, for example, for a week, you can reward yourself, for example, for a Saturday with no homework. You can take a day off. Again, as I just said, college students oftentimes will report that they can finish their work so they don't have any homework over the Thanksgiving break, and that is for them good. The other thing I would recommend in terms of using a master schedule is to use the support of your parents to help you in keeping on task. One good way to fix the procrastination problem is to go to your parents and admit that it is a problem. Mom, look, I've been watching Mr. McGee's lectures, for example. Mr. McGee suggested that procrastination is a serious problem, and I'm going to go ahead and be honest enough to admit that it is a problem for me. And too often I just make up excuses. I need your help. See, we use that phrase a lot for good students. I need your help. For the next week, I'm going to try and keep a master schedule, and I want you to remind me every once in a while. And even though I might yell at you and say, leave me alone, please understand that I'm really not yelling at you. I'm just angered because I probably need to be doing it more. Use your parents to help you and their support. Use the master schedule as well in group study. I mentioned group study as an important dynamic, and the master schedule is the way that a group can really work together. One of the most important things about groups is that we stay on task. When people show up, we want everybody in the group to have some idea of what's going to be covered. Master schedules obviously allow for that to happen. Your meetings are going to go way more efficient. You're going to get a lot more work done. And think about it, that's going to leave you more time to socialize, which is why we enjoy our groups in the first place. You know, what did you think about last night? That kind of thing. Now to some detailed use of the master schedule in conclusion. First of all, we want to develop a reading schedule that will help us keep on our reading. Think about this for a second, and maybe for some of you this will blow your mind. If you were to only read 10 pages a day of a book for 30 days, how many pages have you read at the end of a month? At only 10 pages a day. Now think about this. I have students who will look at a book, they have a month to get it read, and they say, there's no way I'm going to get this thing read. Of course, there's no way you're going to get it read in 3 nights. Good students look at all of the work that they have. They look at the amount of time that they have. They divide one into the other. I can take a 300-page novel. I can read 10 pages every night, which is maybe something I don't have to do in one sitting either. I could read 5 pages in the morning. I could read 5 pages in the evening. See? And I can do it in small chunks. Learning journals allows for me to do this because I can always go back and read my learning journal notes to make sure I didn't forget any parts of the book that I've been reading. And that way, by the end of the month, I've read my book without a tremendous amount of frustration that I'm not getting it read on time, etc. Also, we want to think about writing projects and the demands placed on us by writing projects. The whole writing process demands that you know when a project is due so you can plan accordingly. In other words, we want to make sure that we are planning our editing properly. One of our major problems for us is the paper's due Friday morning and we're writing it for the first time when? Whoops. You're not going to have a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of editing when the paper's being written at 1 a.m., right, on the very day that it's due. We have to be able to plan accordingly. We have to know in advance. The master schedule allows for you to consider as well all your classes equally. Too many students will use their physics to explain why they missed their English deadline. Mr. McGee, I would have had my paper in, but we had this major project in science, and that one took me all week, and I just didn't... Wait. We want to make a promise as a student. We will never, ever, ever use another class as an excuse for missing a deadline. Because the truth is, it's not an excuse. We know, if we're good students, what's due in every class. We know that. So that will mean for us then that we are always trying to look ahead and always know at least 2 weeks in advance what's happening in every one of our core classes. Core classes, again, simply those classes where we have reading, writing, exercise work, exam work. And we're always thinking, what is due? What is due ahead? Finally, in the last few minutes remaining, I want to talk specifically about some of the issues related to our life that are involved with work, extracurricular, and athletics. Working, I believe, is a very important part of the high school dynamic. But we want to make sure studies always come first. We want to try to obtain as much as possible our work schedule 2 weeks in advance so that we can plan accordingly. Go to your manager again and say, please, I need your help. I want to be a good worker, but I want to be a good student. I want to do them both. Can you let me know 2 weeks out what my work schedule is going to be so that I can plan accordingly? It's very important as well that you become involved in the life of the school. You want to know in advance what projects for the semester are due. The other important thing is athletics. Athletes oftentimes, unfortunately, will use their athletics as an excuse to miss deadlines. Good athletes would never do that just like a good athlete understands if I'm going to be a good athlete, I have to train. They would never use their academics as an excuse. But you can go to your coach and let them know, I really want to do well in the classroom. Is there any way that I can know in advance what types of travel schedules I'm going to be involved with for the season? So, for example, if I'm going to be out of town on a Friday, I might want to get my work done beforehand on a Thursday. Does that make sense? Most coaches will appreciate that you all of a sudden have found maybe a newfound interest in academics, because the truth is, if you're going on to play at the college level, you've got to do it in a classroom too, which is, of course, why many athletes don't do well at the next level. They never really learned how to study at the high school level. Okay, we've finished now with some major information, and we're ready to look at a research project that puts it all together. I'm excited to do that with you, and I'll come back in a moment to talk with you about how that looks.